Hello and welcome back to WineBob. It's been a while. Thanks for joining me today. I really just want to do a quick recap about what we're doing here at WineBob. So the wines that we're covering week to week are grocery store wines. We're not doing boutique wines. We're not doing these small producer wines. We're focusing on widely available grocery store wine. Mine are from a Safeway here that's really close. And the benefit of doing that is that if you want to taste with me at home, you can get these bottles. They are, like I said, fairly widely accessible. And if you don't have access to these wines at your local grocer, get something that's comparable if you're really interested in tasting alongside. So you don't need to grab the Bodega Norton Malbec if you're enjoying wine with me this evening, but maybe grab a Malbec from Mendoza, Argentina. And you're going to be finding these wines predominantly in the imported wine section, which in some grocery stores is going to be fairly narrow, some it's going to be a little bit bigger, but at least so you can navigate a little bit better where to find it on the shelf, you're going to be finding this in the imported wine section. Now, Malbec is made in a number of different areas all throughout the world, but as far as the New World is concerned, Argentina is very well known for Malbec. And Bodega Norton was founded up in the foothills of the Andes Mountains in an area called Luján de Cuyo. Now, this is a very important subregion because it's one of the small subzones of Mendoza that's very well renowned for the Malbec that they produce. And what's really interesting about Mendoza in general is that in a lot of regions all throughout the world where they're growing these vines, if they are up in the foothills, they're usually going to be in the 100 to 200, maybe even 300 meters above sea level. But this area really kind of breaks that mold, and that a lot of these vineyards are going to be 900 to 1,000 meters above sea level. And part of the reason for that is that the Andes Mountain really creates a rain shadow effect and blocks a lot of that coastal influence that's going to be coming in from the west. And a side effect of that is that a lot of this area is really arid desert condition. The only way that you can get suitable conditions for growing grapes is if you do it at a higher elevation. So you get a little bit of coolness, you can really keep some of that acidity intact, and so that it really balances out tannins and a lot of that body you're going to be getting from the extra alcohol, because like I said, this is a hotter region in general, so you're going to end up with this higher alcohol, higher body. Argentina is very much part of the New World, so you can expect a lot of these fruity characteristics and kind of expect something a little bit closer to, say, Cabernet Sauvignon, kind of mixed with a Merlot or something like that, where it's got a lot of this nice big, bold, juicy fruit, but still has a nice, good structure of tannin behind it to kind of hold it up. In 1895, this vineyard was found by Edmund Norton, and he was an engineer who came in from England and was building the railroad through the Andes Mountains going into Mendoza, and he fell in love with the area. So he purchased this plot of land that he started making wine for, and they started actual construction on the winery that's there today. I think it was in early 1910. And again, this was a passion project because he was wildly in love with the area. He was mainly focused on real quality winemaking, and he made a name for himself in the region and reached national acclaim come the mid-1950s. Now, as his legacy continued, he didn't have anybody to really pass it on to, so he ended up selling it to Gernot Swarovski, and you may know that name from Swarovski crystals. It's the same guy. The Swarovski family owns Bodega Norton, and there's a lot of money behind this. This is not just a family-owned winery anymore. This is owned by somebody with net worth of multi-billion dollars. So they had a lot of money to be able to expand and to innovate the practices that were taking place. The benefit of doing that is they were able to take the practices that they were doing at the time. Granted, this winery had already reached national acclaim, and they brought it to an international status with that same focus on quality winemaking that it had when it was first founded by Edmund Norton back in 1895. So the Swarovski family acquired them in 1989, and since then has expanded the wine line to include things like sparkling wine, as well as a number of different tiers on their Malbec line as well. So they have the intro Reserva, which, even though this is kind of an intro wine as far as their Malbecs are concerned, they still source these from some of their old vines in Luján de Cuyo, and they have a special practice in the area called mapping the vineyards. And what that means as far as Bodega Norton is concerned is they map over their vineyard area different blocks of Malbec and different blocks of grapes that are at varying ages or that have different types of soil types, so that what they can do is when they take those grapes into the winery, they can blend them based off of very specific microclimates and terroir based off how they've mapped it within their vineyard area. And it's something that's very unique to Bodega Norton, and it really kind of shows that they have this quality focused philosophy about their wines. Now, after Garneau Swarovski had acquired the winery and they built a restaurant, they built a terrace where you can go out, have a meal, and enjoy your wine while you're still enjoying these beautiful, beautiful panoramic views of the Andes Mountains right in front of you. Also overlooking the vineyards. I mean, as you've seen with some of the other wineries and vineyards that we've gone over in the past, it's not just about the wine. It's about the experience that accompanies it. And if you ever have the good fortune to visit some of these places, it really does turn into an experience, because you're not just there to enjoy a great glass of wine by great winemakers. You're there to enjoy the location, the locale, the people, and a lot of these views that you can soak in along the way. The benefit of this bottle is it's $17 a bottle, so again, you're not breaking the bank. If you want a great quality wine, you can do it while still not spending $50 or $100 on the bottle. Granted, they do have wines that go into those different price points, but again, you're going to be, buying very specific plots from very specific winemakers that have a very specific pedicure. But for being an intro level wine, it still sees a year's worth of oak pedicure and then additional bottle aging on top of that, so you're still getting a great quality wine without having to spend all that extra money. Now, I do want to point out one quick thing as far as the label is concerned. It does say Reserva. Now, in Argentina, there's no law that is tied to the word Reserva on the bottle. So if you see that, it really doesn't give you an indication of quality, or it doesn't give you any indication as to how much time it spent in oak or what happens to it as far as the winery is concerned. It's really designated by the winery to say a certain thing. And so the definition of Reserva will change from bodega to bodega. Like I said, I'm really excited to try this one, so I'm going to jump right in. Right off the bat, I'm getting this candied orange peel characteristic on the nose, nice floral components like lavender and violets, which very common in Malbec to have this purple floral characteristic to it. I also get a lot of these really ripe fruits. Blueberries, I get blackberries, boysenberries, some vanilla and caramel from that oak treatment. Actually, a lot of caramel. Getting this oak toast, a little bit of cedar, coffee grounds, this really dark cherry, almost like Luxardo cherries, where it's that bourbon soaked, really, really rich cherry. Getting this dried leaves, nice like potting soil earthiness to it. Nothing too overbearing though, a lot of it's still on this fruit. So comparing this to the Rioja that we were tasting last week, the tannins are much younger. They're much more abrasive, a little bit more sandpapery and gritty. Not unpleasant, but you can kind of tell the youth of this wine because it's so muscly and powerful, even as far as that tannin structure is concerned. Now, the acidity is still there to hold all of that in check. So the structure, for the most part, seems pretty well balanced as far as I can tell right off the bat. So pretty. A lot of those flowers are really coming to the forefront. You get a lot of those violets, a lot of the lavender. Ooh, a lot of lavender on my palate right now. And those berries that are coming through are so fresh and so luscious and so juicy. Like, I'm salivating right now just thinking about it. Boysenberries, blackberries, even a little bit of this really nice, like the blueberry skin, where it's still a little bit of that like gritty aspect to it. It's also matched by this like dark chocolate and this little bit of this like ground coffee. Again, I was talking a little bit about that earthiness, that potting soil and those dried leaves, and it's there, but it's a little bit more on the finish, so it really hasn't made its way to the forefront yet. And even that, it's just a measure in terms of its complexity. Again, when we're talking about New World wines, we're not saying that it's only going to be fruit. You can still have some of that earthiness there and a little bit of this terroir forward style, but when you get on the palate, it's going to be much more of this fruit. So it's really going to take up the stage as far as the profile is concerned. I'd say as far as Malbecs that I've tasted, I'd put this at about 4 wine bottles out of 5. I think it's really enjoyable, very pleasurable, and for the price point, especially in this region, you could definitely spend a lot more to get something comparable in the same range. So if you do get the opportunity and you haven't tried it yet, check out the Bodega Norton. I think it's a really fun one to try. If New World fruity style wines are not your bag, a really good option would be to try something from the Cahors region in France. Again, this is going to be Malbec, but it's going to be in that old world style. But at least you do have options that if you're like, oh, Malbec sounds really interesting, but fruity really isn't my thing, definitely check out something from Cahors. I think you'd really enjoy checking them out, especially if you're an old world freak like myself. Now, I really do appreciate you guys taking the time to join me for this tasting, and I look forward to a time in which we're able to go and pick something that's a little bit more smaller producer, that's a little bit more focused on different wine practices all throughout the world, and we can really start getting into these really niche style of wines because they can be really fun and they can be really cool and show some really, really exquisite winemaking at their best. And so I look forward to a time that we're able to share that together. I would really appreciate it if you could like, share, and subscribe, and you can do that with that big button right there. It'll give you the opportunity to get the alert as soon as new content's coming out. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been a real pleasure tasting with you, and I look forward to tasting with you again in the future. Cheers.